Hello, everyone. It's that time for the J Moore Tech Talk Show, where we answer questions about technology, explain the way they should work, and why they don't sometimes. And now here's your host, John C. Morley. Hey, everybody. It's John C. Morley with the J Moore Tech Talk Show. Great to be here, Marcus, on another Friday. How are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent, John. It's very great to be with you once again on another sweet hot Friday.
Yeah, got a great show here tonight. First, we have an amazing author coming just a little bit later in the program. I think you're really going to enjoy John Hart, who is an amazing author. I won't take too much thunder away from him right now, but we're going to have an interview with him just a little bit later in the show, not too long later. And a lot of things have been happening, with technology in our world. You remember Fry's Electronics? Do you remember them?
Yeah, they got the funny logo. So, one-stop shop.
Yeah, they got the funny logo. Yeah, they're the kind of place you can go for all kinds of
Yeah.
electronic stuff that you really don't need. And they're closing.
After nearly
For
36
good.
years in business, this is terrible, John. You said that, you called this, we should call you Prophet John sometimes. So, you said more and more of these stores were going to go away.
Unfortunately, yes, and I've been to Fry's a few times. I've purchased them online as well, and this is the go-to chain for the tech tinkerers, they call it, looking for obscure things that nobody ever wants, and they charge a lot of money for them.
Yeah.
They remind me a lot, Marcus, of Radio Shack. Do you remember Radio Shack?
Yeah, that's all we can say about Radio Shack is that. Do you remember Radio Shack?
That's the thing. Now, Radio Shack wasn't as high on the food chain as Fry's Electronics, but Radio Shack, I still remember to this day, being an engineer. Well, no, I wasn't an engineer back then, but I would be getting these breadboards, and you could go to a store and you could build all kinds of stuff from what they had. It was pretty amazing. And not only could you, get batteries and all kinds of circuit boards and all kinds of resistors and piezo buzzers and you name it, they had it. Relays. And then something just sort of happened, Marcus, in the last, I don't know how many years.
Yeah.
But they stopped carrying things like 50 and 1, 101 electronic projects. And then the breadboard wall just sort of vanished. And the whole department just sort of went away. And then the store just got more junk in it with electronics that most people don't want. And they sold a lot of overpriced things that really weren't
Right.
made in the United States, unfortunately. I still remember they had an intercom. It was a Radio Shack intercom, and they
Yeah, I remember
charged a
that.
lot of money for it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so great. But this just goes to show you, Marcus, people don't buy, they actually buy on a name. They don't really take a look at the technology and how good or how bad it is.
No, not at all.
It's the truth.
And that is absolutely the truth, the gospel, if we want to put it that way. And far as I'm concerned, the way that the world is shaped right now, people like to have more control of when they want to go get an item, electronic item that is going to involve like repairing their system from the comfort of their home. They're not going to necessarily need to go walk into the store and go do that. They're going to need to take their time and not want to pay uh, over the price for it.
I will give you a perfect example, Marcus. I'm not going to mention the people who are going to be incriminated here, but you're going to guess who I'm talking about. They have a letter that, fourth letter of the alphabet, and there's three letters in their name, but I'm not going to say their name.
Okay.
And they have a computer that's been out for many years. Well, there's a lot of computer companies, so I haven't said the name yet. But this particular company doesn't manufacture computers. They're a marketing company. Okay. They're
Right.
very good at marketing, but they really don't manufacture. I mean, they throw some things together, don't get me wrong, but they're a marketing engine. That's what they are. This particular company decided, and this is probably no shock to you or anybody else, that they're going to start to make things proprietary, right? Well,
Mhm.
one of the items they had was a power supply about a couple of years back, and they said, "Oh, gee, we're going to make a high density power supply." Now, a typical power supply has a connection and you plug it onto the motherboard. However, they decide in their infinite wisdom that they're going to create a high density connector so they can take up less room. And they believed that it was going to be the be all end all and that every manufacturer was going to just fall to their knees and start making power supplies like this. Well, a couple did, and then they stopped. And I recently had a client that brought a computer in for repair. And I said to him, this is a special power supply. Oh, it's pretty standard. Well, beside having the little clip on the side and the plug's also different. He said, well, I could just go online and buy one. I said, that's fine. Go ahead and buy one. He went online and ordered it, had it shipped to us. And guess what? We got the power supply.
So what happened?
Well, we got it. It looked great. Size was perfect. It fit in the case perfect. But the end wasn't a high density connector. It was the regular low density connectors that we're still been using for years to plug into motherboards.
Wow.
He then was a little frustrated, went back to the place again. He ordered again from another place. They sent us the power supply. The same thing, just a different color, but still had the low density connector. So finally, I said to him, this is getting crazy. I found him a low density to high density adapter. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, Marcus. Really, you can't. A low density to a high density connector. So what it did is it took the typical plugs that are on your power supply that would plug into the motherboard, sometimes referred to as the P8, P9, and now they're combined as one plug, and that would just plug right into your motherboard. Well, this would plug into a wire, and the other end of that would then plug into the high density connector on your motherboard. That little cable, $14.
Wow.
The reason I bring this up is that they don't always do what's best for the consumers or business owners. They try to do something to get them entrapped, Marcus.
Yeah.
And now that same power supply, okay, that normally would have been $30 or $40, well, the version of it that had this special connector on it was close to $200 if you could get it. And it was being made by this company, I don't want to say the name, over in China, because they don't make their own power supplies. They just put their name on it for them. And then very tiny, small print, they have the name of the power supply company. When you call the power supply company, because we did this, they said, oh, sorry, we can't sell you just one. We only manufacture that for the name of the company. I said, well, I'll buy two. He says, no, you need to buy 100 of them. Is there anywhere I could buy this? We don't make it anymore. What do you mean you don't make it anymore? You just told me it's the latest thing. Well, it was, but then it kind of went nowhere. I mean, does that make any sense, Marcus?
No, that doesn't make any sense at all. Oh man.
It makes no sense. And this is why this company with the 4-letter name, with the fourth letter of the alphabet starting, just seems to have these pretty cases. They're very attractive. But when they break, they have a proprietary fan, proprietary cable, proprietary power supply. And their solution is not to replace the item, but to replace the whole computer. Because they usually can't get the part that they had from 5 or 10 years ago. Isn't that sad?
That's very sad. And it seemed like it's by design. They put you.
I think so too, because
they put you in this jam for a purpose.
We gave them the part number that he ordered, and he verified again. He gave them the same part number again, and they shipped the same stupid power supply with a different color on it. He even went back to the manufacturer that he bought the computer from, this 4-letter name, a letter word, and they said, sorry, we don't have any more. They're discontinued. The computer's only 4 years old.
Oh, man.
But they got a beautiful, pretty name and a nice logo. And if you pay a little extra money, I think they give you U.S. support now. I don't know if they still do that, but I know they were giving you support in another country. And then if you pay a little more, I think they might have stopped doing that because people were getting really pissed off about that. Mm-hmm. You had to pay $10 more a year to get U.S. support. Something's wrong with that picture.
No, I can't agree with you more. Anything to kind of stretch the dollars of those who supposed to be, customers you care about.
They don't care about anybody. All they do is care about us making money, I think.
Yeah.
And that's probably very obvious.
Yeah, it's very obvious, especially when you can't get something as simple as a part replaced, very easily. So, yeah.
So when you buy a computer and it's very inexpensive, and you think you're getting such a steal, you're probably going to pay 2 to 3 or 4 times more to be able to get that part, if you can even get it, to fix what goes wrong on your computer. I don't know. But yet they keep making money. This is what really boggles my mind.
Yeah.
Why do people still keep going back to companies like this, Marcus?
Yeah, it's total mind boggling. And sometimes we like to say, well, it must be good marketing.
That's what they are. They're a marketing company. And do people just like to hear the sound? And then, you call the 800 number and you talk to somebody. I know one time I was helping a client and they had this gold such and such support. We called them up. They sent somebody out to fix this computer that didn't even work for the company. They were an outsourced company. Guy came out and he started to proceed to fix this laptop because it was all covered under this warranty. Mm-hmm. And the first question I asked him, Marcus, is, "Where's your ESD belt?" He says, "What?" I said, "Your ESD belt. Where's that?" I said, "You're on carpet here." He says, "Oh," I said, "I have it in the car." "Well, can you get it?" He went and got it, put it on. He's like, he's like, "I don't have the wire to connect it." "You don't have the wire?" He's like, "Yeah, but don't worry about it, man. It's okay." I said, "You're on carpet, for crying out loud." He's like, "Yeah, I have it on my wrist." I said, "Yeah, but what good is it going to do if it's not connected to something that grounds you?" "Yeah, yeah, don't worry about it. You worry too much." So I took him and I brought him to a room in the data center which had tile floors,
Yeah.
and he was fine. But my point is that the quality and the level of service, Marcus, it's just not there anymore.
Yeah, let alone the competency, if we want to add in the competency.
I mean, he was just going to open up that laptop, which had how many thousands of parts in it. Okay. Now, here's the best one I forgot to tell you. So, the laptop was obviously freezing. Something was wrong with it. So, it could have been a bad hard drive, lots of things. Now, common sense would have been to just replace the laptop since it's like brand new, right? Maybe a
Right.
couple weeks. They send somebody out, they change the motherboard, but they don't change the connector for the Wi-Fi because that wasn't covered under that ticket.
Mm.
Well, what about the hard drive? Oh, that's not covered under this ticket either. Are you kidding me? Well, we can come back again, but we have to open up another ticket for that. The guy wound up coming back 3 times. At the end of the third visit, I said to the technician, I said, "Look," I said, "I've been here several times, and every time I come out here, I'm here because the client has asked me to come out to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing." He said, "Well, you don't have to do that." I said, "Well, obviously I do because the first guy didn't even know about electrostatic discharge and how it could damage the product." "Mm-hmm. I see. Okay, well, don't worry about that one. I'll take care of it for you." He finishes what he's doing in a few hours. He puts the hard drive, puts everything in, and guess what? It doesn't work. It freezes again. He goes, "It's your software." I said, "We just imaged a brand new hard drive." "Oh." Comes back. He says, "You're going to have to call support." "Well, what are you?" "Well, we're just a hardware support. We don't handle the software." "It's a brand new hard drive that you gave me, and I just imaged with a copy that works on other machines." I don't know what to tell you about that.
Oh man.
Now, did we ever get the laptop fixed? Well, I got on the phone with their wonderful gold support people, and they assured me everything would be fixed. Don't worry about it. I said, "Tell you what we're going to do. I don't want any more people coming out to my client's site. I want you to take this laptop back and overnight my client a brand new one." "Oh, we can't do that, sir." "Well, why not?" "Well, because it's actually 2 days and so many hours, and the warranty is only covered for 7 days after some nonsense." And I was like, "This is crazy." He said, "We can't get you that model. It's not in stock. Can I speak with a supervisor?" After I talked to a supervisor, which is 10 or 15 minutes more, I said, "It's really simple." I said, "This guy has lots of your laptops here.
Mm.
I'm going to make sure he never buys another one of your laptops again. And I can assure you that if you don't take care of this, okay, well, we don't have that model in stock. We'll get him a better model." Well, that we could do. He had the laptop the next day. All that aggravation we had to go through. And we helped the client through that. The client wouldn't have known what to do with that whole situation.
No, not at all. It would have been an instant,
But
emotional
yet, they
response.
claim to be helping these Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies, and they can't even see their way through a paper bag, let alone wear an ESD bracelet that's supposed to protect you from electrostatic discharge.
Oh, it's terrible. You
That
know.
is that is absolutely terrible. But speaking about technology,
Whew.
hackers are attacking the Vietnamese dissidents. Now, if you're wondering what that is, according to Webster, a dissident is a person who actively challenges an established political or religious system, a doctrine, a belief, a policy, or institution. And Amnesty International says it has found that a hacking group known as Ocean Lotus has nothing to do with the ocean, don't worry, has been staging more spyware attacks on Vietnamese human rights activists in the latest blow to freedom of speech in the communist ruled country.
You know what that sounds like, John? It really sounds like, the government, has hired their own hackers to. it's
Yes, it really does. And the human rights groups have been urging Vietnam to cease its repressive activities toward critics and the damages that's been going on for punishments of bloggers. And this is just absolutely crazy. I think it just comes down to a fear because the government's
Yeah,
hiding stuff from people.
yeah,
And they figure if they do this, then they're just going to go away. But, I got to tell you, we haven't talked about the different types of hackers, but there's one type of hacker out there, and they have a lot of money.
yeah.
And they go after disrupting political systems, governments, political parties. They have a ton of money and a ton of resources. And if they want to bring down a nation, they can.
Yeah, this is
They
very
can.
this is very dangerous. These hackers are very dangerous. They can target just about anyone that they want to reveal them, and make them and out them. Um, we see this in China a lot, and people turn up missing after they're confronted by the government, and
Mm-hmm.
especially if they're bloggers or reporters, um, or investigative journalists. And these communist countries, you definitely you can't say anything. You can't say anything, and I'm just not surprised at all that this type of activity is going on. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's happening here in our very own country, and or if it's not going to happen more with following the insurrection.
Well, the human rights group said a while back that the Amnesty Tech Security Lab found evidence of the hacking attempts in phishing emails sent to two dissidents, one in the Philippines and one in Germany.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of unrest right now in Germany as well. So yeah, this is very, very disturbing.
And I want to quote something from them. More recently, Ocean Lotus was found to have created fake online media websites based on content automatically gathered from legitimate news websites. End quote. Somebody's hiring them,
Yeah.
but they're hiring them to confuse people so they don't get the right information.
Yeah, sounds very familiar.
It's not like they're just trying to crash a system, they're trying to infiltrate it and give people false information.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to change things. And I know that we're going to see more of this, unfortunately. And I don't know if our government even has, I'm not going to say a plan, but maybe even an inclining to how to respond to this. And these kids that were doing this were actually in I'll call them like these little mobile cafes. And they
Mhm.
do this a lot in Europe because you can go sit down in these cafes and you don't have to pay very much. Some of them are free.
Yeah,
And you can just get up and go to another one and no one can track you.
exactly.
I remember many years ago when I went to New York and the internet was becoming popular, they were starting to charge people by the minute to go online. You had to go buy one of these cards, and then once you loaded the card from your credit card or your cash, then you could go online for, I think it was something like $3 for 10 minutes. I'm sure it's more now.
Yeah.
But something very interesting happened there. When you finish doing what you're doing and you log off, the computer reboots
Hmm.
and it re-images itself. So if anything was on there, it's totally destroyed and back to the way it was originally set up.
Right.
But these mobile cafes are becoming a problem. This is where a lot of the people go when they're trying to do ransomware. They come from these places. They don't come from a home or a house. And there's really no rules or laws or any kind of monitoring at these facilities. They do all types of things that we wouldn't want to mention. And they first look like they're just playing video games, but all they're doing is just sitting at a computer. And there's like hundreds of computers there. And every day they might go there, but then when they get tracked, they might go somewhere else.
Right.
That's why when these people ask for money, they send it to an account, and that account can never be traced because these people don't even have bank accounts.
No, you don't.
It's scary, Marcus.
Yeah, it is, and this is the world we live in, and it's growing pretty widespread. It's been happening for a very long time.
It's getting worse, and these internet cafes are literally just, I don't know, less than a mile or two outside of school dormitories. So they're not able to do this within their school, but they are able to leave their school's campus and just go to a breeding ground and just creating havoc. That blows my mind.
Yeah, it does totally. I'm right there with you on this.
People can't do that in the United States. They can't. This is why we have all these rules and laws. When you open a credit card or a banking account, they want your social security number. They want to make sure, due to the Patriot Act, that you're not doing anything illegal.
Right.
It's something we're definitely going to have to keep our eyes on. But as I told you, privacy is going to become a concern. And then what people do with this information. And then if, databases and things get hacked, and we're going to learn about some other stories later on in the show that I think you're going to find pretty juicy. These big companies, Marcus, they're supposed to know what they're doing. And if they don't know what they're doing, they're supposed to be bringing companies in that do know what they're doing. And yet, they're getting in a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble. Well, speaking about crime and criminal activities, our next guest, John Hart, is the author of 6 New York Times bestsellers: The King of Lies, Downriver, The Last Child, Iron House, Redemption Road, and The Hush, and then The Unwilling, is the only author in history to win the Best Novel Edgar Award for consecutive novels. John has also won the Barry Award, the Southern Independent Booksellers Award for Fiction, and the Ian Fleming Steel Dagger Award, the Southern Book Prize, and the North Carolina Award for Literature. His novels have been translated into 30 languages and can be found in over 70 countries. He is a former defense attorney and stockbroker. John lives on a farm in Virginia where he writes full time. Now, I got to tell you, before I meet with any of these people that I'm going to interview, I'm always very privileged and grateful that either they or their publicists send me a copy of their books. And I have to tell you, I take the time to read their books cover to cover. I know not many people that interview today take that time. I feel that if they're going to give me their time to answer my questions and share some things about their book or their life, I am more than honored to read their book. And I have to tell you, I'm not a person that reads criminal novels. I'm really not. But this book really was one that I could not put down. When I started to read, the Unwilling novel, it was so captivating, Marcus. I mean, the way he defines the characters, it's like the imagination becomes reality. And this particular one took place in a prison, and then how he wraps up the book. I'm not going to get into all the details. I want you to get the book, obviously. We'll have a link below this episode that you can click on. It's just the way he sets up the stage, the plot, the people, and he just gets so detailed about everything that you're on the edge of your chair. I know I was. I think the only time I put the book down was when I went to use the restroom or when I took a quick break, but I came right back. The book had me from cover to cover. I cannot say that about any other person right now that writes a criminal novel. And his background and his candor and just the way he comes up with these stories and how he puts his whole mind, his whole heart, his whole soul, and he creates that drama, that suspense that literally has you waiting and yearning for more. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome the author of many wonderful books, Mr. John Hart, to the J. Moore Tech Talk Show. Well, hey, everybody. It is John C. Morley with the J. Moore Tech Talk Show, and I am very pleased to have John Hart with me, an established author, and actually the person that just came out with a book just a few weeks ago. Actually, on the 2nd it came out, and I had the privilege of getting to read that, and it is an amazing book, but we'll get into that in just a minute. John, I have to ask you, where does your passion come for wanting to always be such a great writer? Because you are an amazing mystery writer.
Well, hey, John, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. Secondly, for saying nice things. Look, I'm a lover of books. I mean, I'll never forget when I first decided to try my hand at writing. It's because I would read books and think I can do it better than that. Now, that was a youthful conceit that proved to be incorrect for a lot of time. I wrote 2 failed novels before my first one was published and became a bestseller. And The Unwilling that you mentioned is number 7. So I've been doing this for a little while now. I love it. I mean, I love everything about a really well done book. I love deep characterization. I love really powerful, propulsive plots. And I love the language. I mean, I like to go deep into language. I spend a lot of time on the words. And for the simple reason, and I don't want to get too long on this point, but if I can generate an emotional response in a reader that goes beyond what's happening on the page, meaning if they feel something and they maybe don't even understand why they're feeling it, and do that through word choice and cadence and the way that certain things fit together in the mind, it's really an amazing thing when it happens. I can't do that every page; it would be too much for everybody involved. But the really key moments in the book, I try to make the language pop, if that makes sense.
I think it's amazing, how you're able to do that because, you really do set the stage in a very unique way. This is not a novel that you can just read once and basically, put down. You have to pay attention with it. And I think that's what's great. Now, I know you actually are the recipient of the Edgar Award. Can you tell our audience what that is and the significance of and why that's so important to achieve that award?
Yeah, look, it's one of my favorite accolades. The Edgar Award is named after Edgar Allan Poe, and it's kind of the Oscar for mystery writers. It's I think the award goes back something like 70 years now. Raymond Chandler back in the day, Agatha Christie, and then on up through modern greats like Michael Connelly and Patricia Cornwell and a number of others. It's a great list to be on. I had a really interesting run with my first three books. I was nominated for the best first novel by an American author, and I was one of five and lost to a guy named Alex Berenson. But then my next two books were nominated for the best novel, which is a bigger award, and it's actually international, any book published or translated into English, kind of in the mystery thriller space. And I won it for my second and third books for Downriver and The Last Child. And the only author in history to win it for consecutive novels. And I think there are three others that have won it more than once. Dick Francis, if you know who he is, I loved him before he passed away. He won it three times. He's the record. But I think there's at least one other person that won it twice. Jeff Parker did, and there may be another. But that was pretty cool.
So where did your inspiration come to write The Unwilling? Again, I don't want to tell people the entire plot here. They need to get the book. But where did your inspiration come for this particular novel?
Okay, so if you don't mind, I'm going to go a little bit long on this because there are a couple of places.
Sure.
So it's set in 1972 in the city of Charlotte, North Carolina. I wanted to set a book in that era because that was the time of my childhood, for one thing, and it was a very simple time as a child. I mean, we played in creeks and playgrounds. We didn't have smartphones and pads and all these things. So it's, in my mind, it's a much simpler time. But I've been around long enough to know that it was actually a very tumultuous time for the nation. I mean, we had, racial strife and riots, and Kent State shootings weren't that far behind us. We were at war in Vietnam, Cold War with Russia, Watergate, communist threats. I mean, it was a difficult time in this country, and it felt like it would be nice to write a novel set in another tough time for America, and just to remind people that we've been in internal strife before, and we've gotten through it. But I remember childhood. I was 7 when the book took place, 1972. So far too young to worry about Vietnam. But I remember some of the older kids that were terrified of the draft, or some that were really eager to graduate and go fight. So I wanted to write a book that sort of encapsulated the simplicity of what I remembered from that childhood. And so one of my main characters is 18, soon to graduate from high school, and desperate to discover what sort of man he's going to become. He represents the simplistic stuff that I remember. And then his older brother, 5 years older, who's done 3 tours in Vietnam and a stint in prison, comes home at the beginning of the book. And, he's harder and jaded and world weary and savvy, all these things. I mean, he's dealt heroin, he's run with motorcycle gangs and illegal gun trade and all these things. And he maybe represents the more complicated time. So that's in my head. That's what I wanted to create, was this type of book. And it was prompted, 2 specific things sort of prompted the idea for the book itself. And I'll try to be brief, but one was the Milei Massacre in Vietnam, 1968. A poorly led group of American soldiers began to massacre a village of innocent civilians. They killed over 500 people. But a very brave man named Hugh Thompson Jr., a helicopter pilot, put himself and his crew between those kind of war-crazed soldiers and these innocent civilians, and saved untold lives. It's called the Milei Massacre. There was a cover-up. The good guys were vilified. Eventually, Seymour Hersh broke the story and won a Pulitzer, and it led to all kinds of national outrage. But I love this idea of courage regardless of cost, which is what Hugh Thompson and his crew exhibited, even though they were vilified for it by the military and the media. And then I write crime fiction, so it's all about what the crime that launches the story might be. So the setup is Jason, the older brother, comes home from war, comes home from prison, wants to reconnect with his younger brother, and they find themselves in a convertible with a couple of attractive young women one afternoon on an empty stretch of road when they pass a prison transfer bus. And this idea is something that I've had in my mind for 30 years, because there was a time that I was on an empty road next to a prison transfer bus in a convertible with my girlfriend at the time. And all the prisoners were pressed against the glass to look at the pretty girl in the pretty car. And I thought to myself, what if she did something foolish? What if she, flashed this bus full of convicts? What might happen? And so that's what starts the crime element of the story. This girl, Tyra, who's venal and prideful and cruel and sadistic and quite drunk, decides to torment the prisoners on this bus with a very sexual display. And 2 days later ends up killed in a pretty vicious manner. And that's what launches the crime element of the story, because all eyes turn to Jason and then to the younger brother when the second girl goes missing.
What you did was just very amazing. How, you set the stage up, and then also how you did the thing with the courtroom. I thought that was great.
You mean when Jason makes his first appearance in court?
Yes, I really liked that. It was very surreal. And just the way, again, I'm not trying to tell everything about the book, but how when you went into the courtroom and how the one person was acknowledged, you're always welcome in my courtroom, and the other person, the prosecutor, well, it's not that you're not welcome in my courtroom, but why are you here? Well, I have my reasons.
Right. Well, what you'll find out in this book is that everybody has reasons that aren't revealed until much later in the novel. There's a character in the prison that Jason was just released from, a very dangerous man. In fact, I consider him the most dangerous man alive, who wants Jason back in prison for his own reasons. And we won't get into that, but he has long strings that reach through the prison and into the community beyond, and, pretty powerful levers to pull. But the courtroom scene that you talk about, that's what I did for a number of years. I mean, I was a criminal defense attorney, so I know that spot pretty well.
That was something, because, I think that's a testament to the way you write. It's not just the fact that you're very creative, but that was going to be a question, and you actually answered it for me, is that how did you get so detailed in the court if you're not always there all the time? Because you have to know how a court works. And so I thought that was really very surreal, and it was not something that was made up. I mean, the book, even though it has its stage where you're trying to, let's say, set a pretend point and have people imagine these things, it's almost hard to believe that it's not true. I mean, even the way it's all written, it's very believable, which I think is amazing.
Well, I mean, that is the name of the game, right? It's, normally I try to create very credible people that you understand in powerful ways, so that you really care about the journey and you take it with them, whatever the stakes are, life or death, freedom or prison. And even in books like this, where I rarely write a criminal mastermind, that was never my experience as a defense attorney. Most are not masterminds. But I had this idea for this character who's in prison and wants Jason back for his own reasons. And he is something of a larger than life character. So it's very important to imbue the book with as much of the real as possible if I'm going to ask readers to accept this character who might be slightly larger than life, but I think in a really super compelling way.
I definitely agree with you. And the thing I want to point out, again, I don't want to give too much about the book. I want people to get the book from you, is that when people are, thinking about something like this, whether it's ever happened to them, or maybe they know somebody unfortunate that went through it, they have an idea of how to imagine it. But if no one's ever had any exposure to the court or to a criminal existence, or someone that had a criminal background, whether it was planned or whether it was accidental, whatever it was, it's different. for that kind of recollection, for them to paint the scene. But I guess what I want to ask you, John, before I get to the next question, is that at the end of the book, I really love, first of all, the way, and I'm going to give one little nugget out. At the end of the book, there is an envelope that shows up. I'm not going to say what it says, but it's given to someone. And the person that it's given to, he doesn't admit that it's him. And the lady that presents it to him basically says, in other words, that she knows it's him because she knows the cars he drives, she knows the description, and he's still not admitting that it's him. He's shaking his head. But when he finds out it's from somebody pretty important, he accepts it, very, picturesque envelope. And it's just interesting that the last page of the book actually depicts what's in that. So I think that was just a nice sum up. Did the book go exactly as you had planned, or did it take some detours?
Well, I never have a plan.
Okay.
That's the first thing you should know. I have this debate with authors all the time. There really is a line down the middle of us. And on one side are people that outline extensively, and I'm on the other side. I call it grope and hope. I make this stuff up as I go. So here's what it means. I think in reality, the people that outline, I don't know how they do it. I mean, the idea of starting a book and knowing every possible twist and character arc in a way that you can sit down and then just build your widget, which is what it would feel like to me. They must be smarter than I, or their brain works differently, but I think that would be a less exciting way to work. The trade-off for me is that, because I make it up as I go, there's always a risk that I'm going to get stuck and have to backtrack and throw away work. I've done that before. I gave away a year's worth of work once because it didn't shape up the way I thought it might. Somebody, and I think it was El Doctoro, described it this way. He has a general idea of where he's going when he starts a book, and I generally have that same thing. But after that, it's like driving down a country road in the fog at night, and he can see as far as the beams reach of his headlights, but not beyond that. So he doesn't know if the road is going to turn, drop, get wide, go to gravel, where it's going to end necessarily, even though he knows he's maybe heading west or northwest. For me, those headlights, that's usually about 2 or 3 chapters ahead. Like, I know what I'm going to write for the next 30 or 40 pages. And as I write those pages, my mind's spinning along the axle, trying to figure out how to make the story better and take it further. And most often that works really, really well for me because I get to live with the story and live with the characters, and it makes for a richer story, in my opinion. But it does bite me sometimes.
How long, John, does it typically take to write something? This book was about 385 pages, roughly. How long did it actually take you to write this book?
So the shortest I've ever done was about 11 months. The longest I've ever done was about 3 years. That was after I had to throw away a year's work. This one took about 16 months, kind of pretty good, solid 16 months.
What was the shortest book you ever wrote, and how long did that take you?
So that would have been Downriver, my second novel. And, page count's kind of irrelevant because publishers can rig that any way they want. I mean, they can take a 60,000 word book and make it really thick with a lot of spacing and wide margins. Word count is kind of the way to tell. Downriver was about 104,000 words. Redemption Road was about 140,000. The Hush was about 135,000. This one's about 120, which is kind of the sweet spot for me.
So that's roughly around 384. So the other book was around 330, maybe 320, something like that.
Yeah, but keep in mind, I mean, they can make it 384 no matter what the word count is. They just play the size and the spacing and everything else. So, Robert Parker, Spencer novels, I love those books, but they were always sold as really big, where's my hand? Big, thick books. But they're really short word count. So if you pick it up, it looks like it's a 400-page novel, but you could easily make it 230 pages. It's just how you do the typeset.
I have to say the book is very easy to read. You don't want to put it down. But what I will say is that you have to put your attention into the book. This is not a book, and I think this is a very good positive thing, that when you're reading the book, you need to focus on the book. You need to give yourself to the book and just let the characters develop and and see how things are going to manifest. The first chapter, you're not going to see where things are going right away. It took me a couple chapters till I actually started to understand who X was and till the other people. I mean, I had a rough idea, but I think that's what happens is that as you start to learn their motives and how they play, and then throughout the book, their motives change is one thing that I love about is that what you expect in the beginning is different from the end. And the last thing I really want to comment as far as the book goes per se is you talk about diving. And this is something that just stuck in my head. I'm very much into swimming and being a Pisces. Where did the diving come from? Like, what was the inspiration for that? I was trying to see where did he come up with that reason and why?
So the diving that you're talking about, these kids, these high school kids, they're sort of given the last 3 Fridays before graduation as senior skip day. And so they all like to go out to the quarry. And this is all very, small city South kind of thing. And there's a tall cliff and a long fall. And the kid Gibby, who's about to graduate, when we first see him, he's trying to find the courage to make this dive, right? And it's something we later learn that his 2 older brothers, both fought in Vietnam. One, Robert, made the dive right before he shipped out. He's the only person who have ever made the dive. Nobody else has the courage. And we find out that Robert did it because he wanted to prove that he couldn't die, that he wanted to go to Vietnam thinking he couldn't die. And so literally when he makes the dive, his first words after are, "Let the Viet Cong touch that," which I love. And then we meet Gibby, the 18-year-old brother, who is at the top of this cliff, and there are all these kids down there watching him. There's his love interest and his rivals and his enemies, and they're all egging him on. He's been trying for 2 years to find the courage to make this dive. And it's about, what he thinks he needs to do to become a man. And then his other brother, Jason, we eventually see him make the dive, not to prove that he couldn't die like his twin brother did, but rather to prove to himself that he was still alive because of what happened in the war and prison. He had very different motivations. So the cliff is kind of a testing ground for these brothers. Is it necessary to make the dive or not? Do you have the courage to make the dive or not? And the wisdom to make the determination. So there's that element. But because this was set in 1972, I also wanted to make it feel like 1972. And you may remember Wide World of Sports. I certainly do.
Yes.
In the mornings.
Yes.
Well, high diving was a big deal in 1972. I mean, it was competitive. Which country had the world record? Who was the guy? And in 1972, the world record for high diving was 15 feet higher than this cliff. So I wanted to kind of tie into that zeitgeist of 1972, Wide World of Sports.
Okay.
Give these kids a challenge that is not quite the world record, but pretty freaking terrifying. I mean, 4 seconds to fall, 70 miles an hour when you hit. It's for real. And I start the book on the cliff, and I pretty much end the book on the cliff. And it's that what happens up there is very relevant to the growth of these young men.
So if you're looking for a book, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll have the link, underneath our video, so you'll be able to get the book easily from John's publishers. The book, like I said, did release a couple weeks ago on February 2nd. It's definitely a different book. I think you're going to really enjoy it if you enjoy this type of literature. It is very amazing. It's very captivating, and he's very creative with his characters. But I just have one more question because we're just about out of time, and that is, what are your plans next, John? Is there another book in you, or what's the next plan, if I may ask?
Yeah, well, I have kids in college, so there better be another book in me. I'm currently writing a sequel to my 5th novel, Redemption Road.
Okay.
Redemption Road is the one that I spent a year trying to write and then threw it out, crawled into a 3-month pit of despair, and then pulled myself out and wrote Redemption Road over the next 2 years. And it's a pretty meaningful book to me and one of my favorite characters. I have to really love a character to come back and revisit them. I don't do it often. So I'm working on that right now and having a really good time with it.
Are the same characters in these other books that I've learned from The Unwilling, or they're different characters, or some of the same?
No, I've only written one follow-up. It was to The Last Child, and it was 9 years after The Last Child came out. So that book was called The Hush. It was my last novel, and you can read it as a standalone. I wrote it that way. But it's the same characters, 9 or 10 years older. But that's the only time I've done it, except for the book I'm working on now, which is the sequel to Redemption.
Well, John, I really want to thank you very much for taking time out of your day to spend with us after the launch of your brand new book. Congratulations on The Unwilling. And I know our viewers are definitely going to become more than, let's say, involved and excited with the content that will play with your brain to create some very amazing situations. When we use our brain and we use our mind, it's amazing the kind of vacation we can go on. So again, I just want to thank you very much for taking your time, and I wish you and much success with your book launch.
John, thank you really for having me on your show. It's been fun.
It is my pleasure, and we hope you'll come back again when you have another book, and we can talk about that as well.
Be delighted.
Be well. What did you think of John Hart, Marcus? Wasn't he amazing?
I'm about ready to read some of those books. Quite the interesting fellow he is, and information and value is what he brought here tonight to the audience. I'm just stoked.
His book really captivates you when you read it, and when you have a chance to interview him, it's amazing because the way he gets his inspiration for those books, just really was so amazing to me, and how he is, obviously working on other ones, but just the way he takes that time, and he just really almost like a sculptor or a person making clay. He like molds those stories so well.
Yeah, that's truly incredible, and it's quite the bit of the talent to have. So yeah, we definitely want to uh, pile into those. I can probably binge books like that, for the rest of my life.
And the thing about his books is that, they're really, down to earth, and the way he describes everything. Like, you could be blind and actually see everything in his book. And I think that really takes a lot of talent to be able to make a book and the words jump off the page like he did is something that I don't see from a lot of authors in this type of style.
Yeah, quite unique and quite different. I love work like that, so I'm just dying to get my hands on it.
Well, it actually came out February 2nd, and I got a chance to read it when it came out. And getting the privilege to interview him tonight, was amazing. And to meet the man behind the book, and the wonderful talent he has, and to learn that he was actually an attorney and some of those other disciplines was pretty amazing. So in other news, Marcus, Facebook. We were talking about Facebook before, weren't we?
Yeah, we were.
Facebook's been causing lots of little problems. Lots of little problems. Facebook is saying that it will lift its Australian news ban that shares news after reaching a deal with the Australian government on legislation that would make digital giants pay for journalism. How about that, Marcus? That's
Yeah.
a little bit interesting.
Pay for play? Yeah, that sounds like pay for play.
Pay for play. A tech. This is where they're going. A tech firms say another thing is that there is little doubt that Russia is behind the attack. Of the hack, which happened to us not too long ago. I'm talking about the political debate now. So they are really starting to combat with this and say that, if we look at the numbers from a perspective of being logical, forget politics for a moment. Let's just look at logic, okay? And I don't care whether you're Republican, you're Democrat, or you're independent. Let's just look at the numbers. This was a landslide based on those numbers.
Right.
And that person that got into office didn't have that much, I'm going to call it market share. He didn't.
Mhm.
But you're going to
No.
get people that are going to dispute this. I know it.
Yeah. Yeah, when you look at who's going to benefit the most, it really, the evidence really kind of makes kind of sense, especially if more evidence comes out. It's it's like, and then you follow the money. I think that's where you want to start. There is when you start following the money, and if we start following the money, and if it leads
Yeah,
back to
you
where
just
we
follow
think
that
it's gonna
trail.
lead, yeah.
According to the Washington Associate Press, leading technology companies said that a months-long breach of corporate and government networks was hacked, and it was so sophisticated and focused and very labor-intensive that a nation behind that had to point to Russia. Another quote, "We haven't seen this kind of sophistication matched with this kind of scale," according to Microsoft President Brad Smith, telling the Senate Intelligence Committee. So the writing is on the wall here. Why are the political people making this a political debate when we actually have facts to support this? It's not like a he said, she said. We have facts.
Right.
That really can't be contested. Why are they still making it like it's a political thing? It's not.
No, it's not. This is now it's turned into an issue of national security, and when we're talking issue of national security, we're talking about everybody. It's everybody in at this point.
It's affecting so many different people, and I think eventually we're going to get some answers, because I know just watching TV, they want to get some answers about this. I mean, that entire impeachment, that second impeachment, the first one was removed, and the second one was just removed. Now, they had enough votes to impeach him, but the Senate didn't want to pull the trigger. This just really blows my mind, Marcus.
Right.
We're going to have to see what happens. But, with all this stuff going on, I think everything is going to become affected in some way, shape, or form. And here's a perfect example. You know that guy on TV who always talks about his pillow. We call him the My Pillow guy. And you buy one, he'll send you a second one. And if you're not happy with your pillow, well, he'll refund you the price, including the shipping. And he's so confident that you'll have a better night's sleep on his pillow because his pillows are made so much better and all this other nonsense.
Oh yeah.
The Dominion voting systems are suing My Pillow guy for $1.3 billion in a defamation lawsuit against the founder of the Minnesota-based My Pillow company.
Yeah, you got to be careful, how you open your mouth, nowadays, especially if you got a big platform. It might come back to bite you.
Exactly. And, this My Pillow CEO, which is Mike Lindell, he spoke in the Rose Garden of the White House in Washington. And the Dominion voting system filed this $1.3 billion defamation lawsuit on February 22nd. They filed it of this year against Lindell. the founder and CEO of a Minnesota-based MyPillow, saying that Linfeld falsely accused the company of rigging the 2020 presidential election. Those are some pretty hefty and strong words. You got to be careful what you say, don't you?
Yeah, you do. And this is an influential character, so it will only make sense that they will come after him to get him to like pay for trying to destroy their reputation.
They know he's got a few dollars, okay, and he has a little bit of an attitude, all right. So they know he's worth some money because his name is synonymous with pillows, whether you have one of his pillows or not. It reminds me of something you get on an airplane, and there's one word you never say on an airplane. It starts with an F and ends with an E, okay, and you just don't say that. Or you also don't say the word which starts with a B and ends with an M. You don't say that either. I think people have to understand that everything you do in life has a consequence. So we have a responsibility to act in a manner that is expected. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be something you're not, but it does mean that you have to act within the norms of what we'll consider a normal acting person in society. I guess that's what they'll call sane. But this is just amazing because,
Exactly.
Lindell, known as the MyPillow guy from his TV commercials, told the Associated Press that he welcomed the lawsuit and said the discovery process will prove him right. In another quote, "It's a very good day. I've been looking forward to them finally suing," said Lindell, who went to the White House to promote his theories in the final days of the Trump administration. I mean, what is going through his head? He's welcoming a lawsuit, Marcus?
He's in a right. He just put himself in a race with a three-legged dog. He's betting on a three-legged dog in a race, and if my guess is correct, he's not going to come out victorious in his lawsuit.
And here's another interesting point, which we've just learned. This is the third, not the first, not the second, the third defamation lawsuit that Dominion has filed against its accusers.
Wow, they just going after everything.
And it is by no means the last, they said.
Wow. I can imagine what it's going to look like for those on the receiving end of the wrath that's coming from Dominion.
But something interesting that I also want to quote, Lindell said, "MyPillow did get a brief surge in sales." Well, wasn't that nice? But he also said that more than 20 retailers have now dropped his products, including Bed Bath & Beyond, Kohl's, and noted that Twitter permanently banned him and MyPillow. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that was coming. Yeah, and there's no one safe in cancel culture.
No, I always say to somebody, when you're on the way up, always be nice to people because you never know if you're going to meet them on the way down. The tables can turn at any moment. And I think you have to realize that your actions and your consequences predicate what you do or what you don't do. And I think what he should have done is kept his mouth shut.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he did get an upsurge in sales, but then he lost some major retail places. I mean, what was he thinking? I hope his legal
Yeah, this
counsel is
is
giving
a
him some
poor
good
use
advice.
of
But the one thing I would say is he
just the
probably should just.
platform. Yeah, poor use and abuse of power and influence, and just another example of a guy, that was standing at the top, and now, as you put it, John, that is going to be tumbling down and has to meet everyone that he went above, back down again.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people could deal with his attitude, and he was successful, and that was fine. But I always said this, Marcus. Everyone in our world has the right to be successful. That is the American way. Okay, what you don't have the right to do is to become successful when you harm another person, or you degrade or you defame the other person. I'm not talking about being competitive, okay? Because there's a lot of people, let's take me for example, that I go to do something and they're like, John, when are you going to give up? And my answer is never. So it's okay, Marcus, to have some haters. I'm not saying everyone has to love you. But what I am saying is that there's a difference between, people being jealous or not wanting you to succeed, and those that hate you because you did something to hurt or inflict pain or defame them. There's a complete demarcation between the two of them. I'm sure you would agree.
Yeah, definitely agree.
So it's going to be very, very interesting, what's going to happen. But speaking about more criminal activity and people becoming victims, our good old friends Kroger, who we don't hear much about, they usually mind their own business, is the latest victim, Marcus,
Yeah.
of a third-party software data breach. Ouch. Ouch.
Yeah, this is terrible.
They were among multiple victims of a data breach involving a third-party vendor file transfer service and notifying potentially impacted customers, offering them free credit monitoring. So Kroger's is actually based out of Cincinnati, and their pharmacy chain said in a statement, and I quote, just a few days ago, on the 19th of this year, that it believes that less than 1% of its customers were affected, specifically some using its health and money services, as well as some current and former employees, because a number of personnel records were apparently viewed. Are they kidding me? So it's okay because they believe less than 1% were affected? I don't see the logic in that, Marcus.
No, I don't see that either. Uh, it just tells you. I mean, this is a telltale that, like, their system wasn't locked up, correctly. They didn't have it. They didn't have it all together.
Right. And it was because of a third party vendor. So I get that. But then now who becomes the one at fault? If it's the third party vendor, okay, and it's technically not Kroger's fault, then somebody needs to start owning up on responsibility. And my question is, did the third party vendor tell them that they needed to make changes? Because that's not coming out in this article. Because if it did, then I'd say Kroger's name is mud. But if, they didn't tell them, then I can understand that they presumed they were doing everything to the best letter of protection. What do you think?
Right. Yeah, I can't agree with you more. But I guess I'm just curious, John. For them to maybe have whatever relationship they had with him for this long, you know, uh, I'm just wondering, what possibly could have broke down here to cause this to happen, where certain files or certain data just leaked out like this. What is your guess here?
Another quote I want to bring up is that Kroger said The breach did not affect Kroger stores, IT systems, or grocery store systems or data, and there was no indication that fraud involving access personnel data had occurred. It's like they're talking out of two sides of their mouth. I also quote, Kroger said it was among victims of the December hack of a file transfer product called FTA, developed by Acelion, a California-based company, and that it was notified of the incident on January 23rd when it discontinued use of Acelion's services. Companies use the file transfer product to share large amounts of data and hefty email attachments. Acelion has more than 3,000 customers worldwide, and it said that the affected product was 20 years old and nearing the end of its life. The company said on February 1st that it had patched all the known FTA vulnerabilities. I don't know. I just feel like somebody's not telling the truth, Marcus.
No.
You know?
Yeah, it's just a continuous trail of mistakes here being made.
For the Washington State's auditor, the hack was very serious because it exposed files of 1.6 million claims obtaining in the investigation of a massive unemployment fraud last year. So they have proof. Why is the store lying?
Oh, wow.
Now it gets better, and I quote, our Mr. Former President Donald Trump is among Jones Day clients, but the criminals told the Associated Press via an email thread that none of the data was related to him.
Yeah, this is very interesting.
And other Acelion customers affected by the hack included, you're going to love this, University of Colorado, Washington State's auditor, Australia's financial regulator, the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, and the prominent U.S. law firm Jones Day, which is where we get that from. So this was not a minor thing. And I can't believe, Marcus, that all these companies would still keep using the product if it had a deficiency. They claimed that they notified the stores, but did they really notify the stores?
No, I don't think they did.
Just seems like there's just more questions and no answers.
Yeah, I think somebody got the news
I don't
a
think
day
so
too
either.
late.
I think they probably knew about this probably last year because that's when the problem happened. And I can't believe that Kroger's, is saying that this wasn't a problem, but yet it affected all these other large companies. I just can't believe that this Acelion company would be just continuing to operate and not notifying people. I feel a lot more is going to come out in this story that has not been revealed yet.
Yeah, there's definitely some missing pieces here.
And I think they've been left out on purpose. But it's funny because, Kroger's is always this little store that doesn't really bother anybody. They really don't cause any problems. They mind their own business. They're profitable. But they're really a well-run store. They don't try to get anybody else's laundry. They really don't try to cause any problems. They're not like other stores.
Right. Yeah, so that's pretty suspicious.
It's very suspicious. And the thing that has me concerned is that they're saying less than 1%. where did they get that number 1% less than that? Like, where's the data? We've already shown that records have affected so many people and they're using the same system. How could they have less than 1%?
That sounds like a real...
That's not accurate, Marcus.
Yeah, that's not.
We might have
That
lost
can't
you
be
there a
accurate.
second,
I
Marcus.
mean, it sounds like a play on PR. It's what it seems like. To protect their hinds. But really, you can say less than 1% and make it seem pretty. But how many files were actually, leaked out? Who was affected?
Right. I mean, if you said, for example, what is 1%, okay, of 1 million, and when you think about 1% of 1 million, 10,000, that's a lot of records.
Yeah,
right?
That's not small. That's not small numbers.
And if you did what is 0.5% of a million, let's just say it was half, okay? You're still talking 5,000 records. And do you know, Marcus, that if, let's just say there was one breach, and let's just say that, I don't know, a breach caused an identity theft, that could be $1 million, okay, times however many. Let's just say, oh, gee, we only had 12 people. Okay, you had 12 people. Well, that's just $12 million. Do they understand the grandeur and the level of scale of what this can be doing to people? I don't think they understand.
No, they don't. And I don't think they're ready to pay out any insurance money to cover people who have identity theft insurance. So, yeah, and
that's like somebody saying, well, gee, I've got credit cards and, well, less than 1% of our records were compromised. So you don't mind as long as it's not your record. But suppose you were one of the people that got affected. That could have a very catastrophic effect on you.
Yeah, the conversation will sound a lot more different.
We're going to see a lot more. Now, we're talking about the pay-to-play. Well, here we are. Microsoft and European publishers are teaming up to push for news payments. This is really interesting. So Microsoft and the European publishers are trying to put together this big tech platform to pay for news, raising the stakes in the brewing battle over whether Google and Facebook should pay for journalism. That's going to be interesting, Marcus.
Yeah, this is crazy. What is this infatuation with these tech companies to control the narrative? It seems like they just really want their hands on the news all of a sudden.
Yeah, they want their hands on the news, but I have to believe that they're going to censor or they're going to control what they want to put out there. Or they might do something like the highest bidder. So, well, sorry, we got a better price on this one, so we're going to show that article instead. I mean, it almost sounds like that's where we're going. They're not calling it censorship. It's really censorship by whoever wants to pay the most money. And the fact that Microsoft is getting involved with a European publisher, this just doesn't sit well with me. I mean, I've never been in love with them. I mean, sometimes they have great products, but sometimes they don't always do what's best for the consumer. You've seen this.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to aggravate a lot of people. Because now if news is going to have to be paid for, you can bet other people are going to have to pay to get that news, which normally is free.
Yeah, there's going to be a paywall. Yeah, there's already some paywalls now, uh, some subscription now to get certain news, and now you're going to be going over to Facebook thinking you can read an article, and you're going to be hit with a paywall.
It's going to be crazy because what happens now is people that go to websites that, let's say, aren't local to their cable area that's providing the news have to either log in with their cable ID, email and password, or they have to pay to go on that website. We're starting to see that already, Marcus.
Yeah. Yeah, this is
So we talked about our friends
concerning.
a long time ago, which was Uber. Well, a major thing has happened on just the 19th, not too long ago. The United Kingdom top court gives a landmark decision ruling a new change for the Uber drivers, or what they like to call justice for the drivers. And you know what they found out? They're not contractors. They're employees.
Yeah.
And that means
if you look,
that's going to be costing Uber some big dough.
Oh yeah. Oh man, it's going to be pretty ugly for Uber. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure this is going to apply not only to Uber but any other driving app service that is in the country.
Well, I don't know that for sure. Remember, this is just the United Kingdom. So if we speculate, Marcus, it could affect Uber in the United States, but I won't swear to that. The laws might be different in the United Kingdom, you know?
Yeah, so but what I imagine is that, like, this might be, something that's kind of standard for the UK, for any company similar to Uber that's in the UK.
It could even affect companies like, the ones that do the delivery services. It could affect them too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so
The
my
only way that it wouldn't affect them.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
What's that, Marcus?
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You were getting cut off. What were you going to say?
No. I guess my only concern is, like, how drivers are reacting to this news. Because some like the flexibility of what their income can be.
It's going to give them benefits, Marcus. That's the main thing they're doing it for. It's not for the money, it's for the benefits.
Right.
They want those benefits. So I wouldn't be a bit surprised if we don't see this becoming another class action lawsuit here in the United States before the end of the year.
Yeah, once this word spreads out, that UK has passed this, I think it's going to be coming real soon. They're definitely going to take another look at this, and maybe even our Supreme Court may get involved, or just some of the local municipalities may get involved, and before you know it, it could apply here.
It's going to start, dominoing all over, and I'm sure the lawyers in the United States are already preparing to change things because they're intelligent. So I would believe that they're already getting a contract in place that's going to possibly protect them. Because by this happening in the United Kingdom, they still have time to change the rules.
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of pressure, put on the governments by the taxi companies, anyways, and
Absolutely.
so I know some of the taxi companies probably have part in this too, and so they definitely would like some of these changes to come up the pipeline, and so that they can get some of their service back.
We talked about this just, I think it was not quite a year ago, but maybe about 8 or 9 months ago. We talked about, these disputes with Uber and Lyft and what's going to happen. And it kind of like went into the ground, but not much really happened. It looks like those seeds are starting to take root.
Yeah. Yeah, this might be the year.
So this might be the year exactly. Our last story for tonight, how would you like to go online and now have to be charged ad tax?
I don't know what to think about that one.
Well, there's a group filing a court challenge of Maryland's internet ad tax. I'd never heard of this before. But in Maryland, there is an ad tax that you have to pay when you advertise online. That's ridiculous.
Yes, just look. I guess it kind of makes sense, but at the same token, well, I mean, if you're in the United States, it makes sense. I guess it would make sense.
But did you know Maryland was the first in the nation to start taxing people for digital advertising, like Facebook, Google, etc.?
Yeah, this is amazing.
They're the only state right now in the United States charging for it.
This could bring in some extra a great amount of revenue for the state. I think they won't be the last. In fact, I know they won't be the last.
But is the court going to allow this, Marcus? That's what I want to know. Is this justified? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, it seems like they're threading on some real tight waters here. Some real tight waters here. So just to see where it would go, at the federal level, I think that's where it's going to really matter at.
So let's talk about what it actually means in dollars and cents. The law would effectively tax revenue affected companies making on digital advertisements shown in Maryland. The tax rate would depend on the global annual gross revenue for companies that make more than 100 million globally. So the tax rate would be 2.5% for businesses with gross annual revenue of 100 million, 5% for companies with revenue of 1 billion or more, 7.5% for companies with revenue of 5 billion, or more than 10% for companies with revenue of 15 billion or more. Did you notice something here, Marcus? I started with the number of 100 million. Okay?
What I noticed in that,
You see what they're doing?
yeah.
They're going after the big
Definitely.
giants. They
I
don't
see the
care
trend
about the
here.
small companies that are making 20,000 or a million. They don't care. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it definitely makes a lot of sense, and the fact that those huge companies don't really pay like much in taxes already. This this is definitely going to make them start paying.
This is just another backdoor, Marcus, for the government to get into these big businesses' pockets. That's what this is. It's a backdoor for them to find another way to tax the companies. They're getting all these tax breaks and they can't do anything.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, and I think they want to find a way to bring them under their control because they're getting too big.
That's the problem. And then are we going to have things like, is Google going to be broken up someday? Because if this starts happening, is Google going to get smart, and are they going to break up Google like they did with AT&T, Bell Labs? I wonder if that's going to happen. Because if they can break the companies, Marcus, into smaller companies that are under that mark, then they could just operate multiple companies.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the lawyers are going to get creative with this, but they did say globally now. So that's another standard. But Maryland's going to be setting a bar. And depending on what happens with this lawsuit is to whether other states are going to jump on board. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah,
we have come to the end of another show.
Yeah, if it favors in the states ball, if the ball goes into the state, I think many other states are going to jump on quickly.
But they're going to make sure that this is going to be a problem, because one thing states don't want to do is adopt something and then have their hands in a cookie jar and spend all this extra money because what they did was actually not constitutional, and then have all kinds of law charges. One thing about going against the state is that it's extremely expensive, and most people don't do it. But when the state is wrong and you go against them, then they don't even want to get in that fight, because it's going to become so expensive for the state. Because when the federal court tells them they're wrong, they don't even want to hear that conversation.
Yeah, totally.
Well, we are at the end of another show. I don't know where it goes, Marcus, but we had a great show tonight, as we always do. I definitely want to thank our amazing guest tonight, John Hart, for coming on. I know we've all learned quite a bit from his interview tonight. And I want to invite you to come back, of course, next week, which is going to be, can you believe, Marcus, we're in March already?
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
February's such a short month. Yeah, it goes by so fast.
Well, we have another person from the Transform You media family going to be with us, Kurt Ruskoff, who will be on from the world of ability. He'll be on with us. Coming more into March, so I tell you who else is coming up. We've got some really, really great guests coming up. On the 12th, we have Dr. Fashad Pavlini, who talks about sustainability. You're going to love that show. I cannot wait to interview him. I was reading some of his work, and just an amazing, amazing doctor. We have a gentleman from China. His name is Francis Cramer. He's actually going to be coming on March 19th. And he actually lived in Germany. Then he went to China to work. And then he retired. and he decided to go back to Germany, but then he returned back to China, and he actually became a manager, which is like one of the higher positions because salespeople in China are not regarded very well. Later in the month, you're going to love this one, ladies and gentlemen. On the 26th of the month, do you know who I have? How many of you ever talked on a cell phone before? Have you ever talked on a cell phone before? We have the father of the cell phone, Mr. Martin Cooper, who made, yes, ladies and gentlemen, the very first cell phone call. You are going to not want to miss that. But incidentally, if you have an idea for a show, or a product you'd like me to unbox, just go to jmor.com, click on the reach out button there to your right. Tell us who you are, what idea you have for a show, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show. Remember, it's not a sales show. It is about providing value to our other many viewers out there. So if you would like that opportunity, reach out to us. We'll set up a brief interview to see if you're a fit for our show. We will send you a media release form, and we'll invite you on our schedule and have you on the show. It has been another great week, ladies and gentlemen. It's always a pleasure to be with you, Marcus.
Always. Likewise.
And we will see you guys next week, which is going to be March. So this is the last time we're going to see you for 2021 in February. But March is going to be a great month. We have a lot of great guests in March, and we have some great guests in April too. So I look forward to seeing everybody. Remember, be smart, be safe, practice social distancing, think with your head. If somebody's giving you a hard time, step aside. Your health is more important, but don't lose your head or create an argument or create a fist fight over something. It is just not worth it. Don't sweat the small stuff. And Marcus, it's all small stuff, isn't it?
It is.
All small stuff. We will see you next Friday, again, March 5th at 5:30 p.m. right here on the Jay Moore Tech Talk Show. But if you missed any of the episodes, you can come back to us or go to jmore.com and not only catch the show, but also catch the transcription of the entire show. And we'll see you guys next Friday night at 5:30. Thank you for tuning in to the Jay Moore Weekly Technology Show, where we answer your questions about how technology is supposed to work and sometimes why you have challenges getting it to work that way. For more IT support and tips, just text IT support to 888-111. That's IT support to 888-111, and you'll get tips on technology. I'll see you next week right here on the Jay Moore Tech Talk Show. Remember, jmor.com.